All right, I'm here with my guest, Matt Noble from the University of Maryland. He's been announcing several different sports there for a number of years. Matt, tell us a little bit about your journey as a sports announcer.
It started out when I was in seventh grade. My first game that I ever did was a Turkey Bowl football game for a youth league football on a Thanksgiving day, and they had 5 games that day. The 75-pound game with the little kids. We played at a local high school, Blair High School, and the PA announcer for the other games was a friend of my parents. And my parents were talking to him and said, this might be something Matt might be interested in doing one day. And he said, well, why don't you have him come up and do the 75-pound game for us? So I went up there, was afraid to say anything in the first quarter. Second quarter, he said, well, you better start talking now or you can go home or go out in the stands and watch the rest of the game. And for some reason, I decided to do the first play of the second quarter and stayed with it. And that was my first game. Was able to do some youth league basketball and wrestling when I was in junior high school. And then when I got into high school, I started out doing the PA for JV games for football and basketball and
What
wrestling.
high school was that?
That was at Northwood High School in Silver Spring, just outside of Washington. And then my junior year, I was lucky enough they asked me to do the varsity games. And so I did varsity football, varsity basketball, and wrestling was a huge sport at our school. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's huge like Pennsylvania huge, but there were 3 schools back when I was in high school that were very dominant in wrestling. And when we would wrestle each other, the gym would be sold out an hour before the match. And for the other matches, we'd still get pretty decent crowds. So I was able to do the PA for that. So that's where I was able to pick up a lot of experience when I was a kid before I was ever out of high school.
That's pretty interesting to me. What made you pursue it even further once you got to college? Like, why did you feel like that was a calling? Is that what?
Yeah, it was something I was always interested in. I wasn't a good enough athlete to be able to play beyond high school, and I wasn't a very good high school athlete to begin with there. So I played a little bit of baseball, which was great because I learned a lot about coaching and playing and what it was like to be a high school athlete there on a pretty good team, but didn't get to play very much. And when you don't play very much, you better know a lot of everything that's going on. So when the chance comes to go into the game, they feel comfortable to put you in the game. But when I went to college, I went to the University of Maryland. I went to my very first football game at Maryland when I was 10 years old. And as soon as I went there, I said, wow, I'm going to go here to school. There's no doubt in my mind, this is where I'm going. It was only 10 minutes from my house. And when I went to Maryland, my freshman year, I auditioned to be on the campus radio station in their sports department and was fortunate enough to be selected. My freshman year, I did a couple of sportscasts on the campus station. I covered soccer, which was not a huge sport at Maryland at the time like it is now. I covered women's basketball, which was a big sport for women's sports at that time, certainly not as big as it is now, but still Maryland was one of the elite teams in the country. And then my spring of my freshman year, a couple of older guys said, we've never done baseball on the campus station, so we're going to try and do 4 baseball games. And we know you like baseball, so why don't you join the 2 of us, and we're going to do 4 baseball games this year on the campus station. So I was able to do that as a freshman. I did more baseball and women's basketball. When I was a sophomore, when I was a junior, I got to do the football games on the campus station. That only was, just a small signal. And so I really got a lot of experience doing that. Was a communications major. Had no intention of going into teaching. My junior year, my advisor was very perceptive. He says, you might want to coach when you're older, and the best way to make yourself marketable as a coach is to get a teaching degree. And we can set it up. You only go an extra semester, you can get a second degree. So I did that, finished my student teaching. As soon as I finished my student teaching, my old high school calls me and says, we want you to come up and be the JV baseball coach because we got an opening. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be looking for a job in radio. What if I get a job? And they said, if you get a job, take the job, otherwise coach. So I went up there and got to coach with my old coaches, which was a great experience. And they weren't hiring very many teachers. I substituted a lot there. And then the principal there finally got me a teaching job in the school system, not at that school, but at Gaithersburg Junior High. And then I started coaching a little bit of football and basketball also. We got a big pay raise in the mid-'80s, and I just ended up staying with teaching and coaching there for quite a stretch.
So you did definitely, your love for sports runs pretty deep.
Right.
What's your greatest accomplishment as a coach?
Wow. I really like the relationships you build with the players. I still hear from players that I got to coach at Northwood in the early 80s. I mean, some of these guys are 50 years old now.
Oh, wow.
Or the guys that I coached at Gaithersburg. At Gaithersburg's baseball team was, they were always okay. They were never great. They weren't awful. And I remember going into Gaithersburg when I was hired as the varsity coach in 1986. I'd been the JV coach in 85. And I looked at all the banners in the gym. And there was no baseball banner. I said, how come there's no baseball banner up there? And the athletic director said, because baseball's never won a championship. I said, wait a minute, this school's been around for 60, 70 years and they've never won a baseball championship? I said, nope. And they said, that's going to be our goal. We want to win some kind of championship to put a banner up in this gym. And we struggled in 86, 87. We lost to Wheaton in the regional championship game. And when we lost, Wheaton was really good. They were way better than us. And I was very happy with the season we had, but we got on the bus after the game and the players were so upset that we lost. They could not believe we lost. They could not believe this. And I said, wow, almost everybody's back next year. We're going to be really good. So in 88, we won the 4A West Region Championship. We beat Wheaton to go to the state semifinals. And so we were the regional champs. And the kids had made up a banner, unbeknownst to me, out of construction paper. It was blue and gold. And when we got off the bus, they all ran into the gym. I'm like, where are y'all going? And they pulled out this and taped it to the wall. So there's our banner.
Oh, that's
and so
cool.
that was a great, we lost in the state semifinals 2-1 to Annapolis, and Annapolis won the state championship. And so that was great. And then my first varsity team at Northwest, a lot of 10th graders starting on that team. And we struggled during the season, but in the playoffs, we were fortunate enough to win our first playoff game. We got the draw. They did a draw, and we got to play one of the weaker teams in the county, and we won. And then we had to turn around and play North Carroll, who was like 17-1 and the number 1 seed. And I'm like, okay, this is great. It was a great season or whatever. We go up to North Carroll, and we beat them. It was, in fact, a 10-run rule. And they stopped the game because we were so far ahead. Peter Urbana lost to South Carroll in the regional championship game. So those were 2 really good teams, but not just because of the successes, but because of the people that were on the team and the people that were on our coaching staff also.
You attribute a lot of that to the chemistry and the character of the group of people that you were working with, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. That team at Northwest was not our most talented team at Northwest. And I think there were teams at Gaithersburg after 87 or in 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, after I had left there, that had more talent. But these guys really got along well together. The chemistry was so important to being successful. I think you can be a good team with great players, but if you're going to be a great team, you have to have great chemistry. You have to have leadership from within, among the players, by the players, as well as just the coaches, and a passion for the game. And that's what those good teams had. One of the best coaching jobs I think, I was ever a part of. I was on a football staff, and our JV football team at BCC, Bethesda Chevy Chase, we were 1-8. But we were almost all 9th graders because they took all the 10th graders up to the varsity. They were trying to rebuild the program. And our guys would come into the sidelines, coach, they're doing everything you said we were going to do, except they were just me trying to tackle Jim Brown or trying to tackle Emmett Smith or whatever. It's just not going to happen. So, you take a lot of satisfaction when you're coaching and making sure that the kids know what they're doing, that you see them get better, and also the relationships that you have. I love hearing from the guys that played for you, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. That's so important.
That's a gratifying feeling. I totally agree. Okay, so that's your coaching gratification. What's one of the single most memorable or gratifying moments you had as an announcer?
Wow. So there's a couple of them. I'm the PA announcer at the University of Maryland for football, men's basketball, and baseball. And I'm the radio announcer for women's basketball. And I fill in a little bit on football and men's basketball games if Johnny Holliday has to miss a game or 2 there. So I would say, as far as men's basketball is concerned, the time that I've been doing the PA, we only beat Duke once before we moved to the Big Ten when I was the PA announcer. And that was in February of 2013, and we beat Duke 83-81. They were the number 2 team in the country. I remember looking behind me, And there were a couple of police officers standing behind me with about 30 seconds left in the game. And I just said, "Do you need something?" They said, "We're here to protect you." I said, "What do you mean you're here to protect me?" He says, "Everybody in the stands is going to come rush this court. And we're going to make sure they don't trample over you at the end of the game." And you can go on YouTube and look up that date and that game, and they've got video of the students storming the court. And it was, obviously great when you're a Maryland person. Anytime you beat Duke in anything, you can beat Duke and JV tiddlywinks, and a Maryland team's going to be excited about it. As far as radio with basketball, the very first game that Maryland ever played in the Big Ten as a Big Ten game was at Michigan State in December of 2014. And the football team was in a bowl game in San Francisco the same day. So Johnny Holliday went with the football team. I went to East Lansing with Chris Nockey and did the game on the radio. So the first game, and Maryland won that game in double overtime. We had almost thrown the game away at the end of regulation. We tied it up. We ended up winning the game. Des Wells had 16 points, a couple big baskets. Miller Trimble had 17 points. So that was a really memorable game there. And as far as football is concerned, and I think this has a little something to do with the state of the football team as it's been in the past. I think Mike Loxley's doing a great job and good things are happening out there. The very first football game I ever did was on Labor Day of 2011, and we beat Miami 32-24. It was on national TV, Labor Day night, Monday night, sold out crowd. We kicked the field goal with like a minute and a half to go to take a 2-point lead, and then Cam Chisholm intercepted a pass with like 55 seconds left. It was a pick six to add to the score there. And that was a great atmosphere. It was really neat. I said, wow, this is really going to be fun. And of course, football has struggled over, the past few years. And like I said, I think Mike's got everything on the right track here coming up. But, those were 3 pretty memorable games. There have been other ones, but those ones really stand out.
I remember that Labor Day football game. And then the other game that I clearly remember that Maryland was not supposed to win was when they beat Texas, when they went down to Texas and beat them for the season opener a few years ago. That was pretty exciting to watch. Even though I'm a transplant down here, I do root for Maryland football and Maryland basketball. Don't follow baseball really closely other than what I hear from you. Okay.
And then, so we played Texas. It was a home and home, but the home game for Maryland, they played at FedEx Field, which is the Redskins' home field. Yeah. So I did the PA for that game. And that was a game, we won that game also. Jay Sean Jones ran for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, threw a touchdown pass. There were 2 rain delays in the game. It was a chance to do a game, here where the Redskins played, which is the team that, I certainly rooted ever since I was a little kid.
Sure.
And so that was certainly a memorable game as well.
Who's had the most influence on you over your career? Who impacts you?
Well, I'd be in trouble if I don't say first my wife. And she certainly has been huge because a lot of what I do, I couldn't have done without her. When I was doing minor league baseball, we were basically living off of her salary. I would be home 7 days, gone 7 days, home 7 days, gone 7 days. She's been super supportive as far as the coaching is concerned. She did put the kibosh on coaching football. She says, that's too much time. You're not doing that anymore. And very supportive of the late nights and everything with that. But as far as people in the business, Johnny Holliday has been huge for me. I was Johnny's intern my senior year at the University of Maryland. I was supposed to intern with Tim Brandt, who obviously went on to a great career as well. Yeah. We worked at WMAL Radio in Washington, which was the station in Washington in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They carried the Redskin games, the Capitals games, the Maryland games, all the big Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard fights and those things. Mm-hmm. It was the station. And when I told Tim I'd rather stay at radio instead of going to TV with him, he said, well, let me talk to this guy who's taking my place and we'll see how it works out. And it happened to be Johnny. Oh. And I got a chance to work with Johnny. And he was huge 20 years later in me getting back to Maryland as a PA announcer and as part of the radio because of the contact that I had made my senior year in college. So obviously Johnny has a huge influence on, he's been very supportive of me. He's been, offers advice. He's always given me the opportunity when it's up to him to fill in for him or to do things and been extremely helpful. As far as PA, Marv Brooks was the PA announcer for the Capitals and for the Bullets back when they were the Bullets at the Capitol Center. And he was sort of the guy that I emulated. when Maryland comes out for games, I say, "Here the Terrapins," and that's off of him because Marv used to say, "Here the Capitals," and
Okay.
that's where I picked that up from. And I actually had, when I was teaching, I had Marv's son in class, and
Oh,
that was
wow.
neat. And Marv passed away several years ago. He was a big time Washington DJ also, but and just sitting in the stands or listening in the background on TV, he was somebody that I thought, wow, he's the guy that I would most like to sound like, be like, learn from him, take from him.
If you were going to give advice to a young person, somebody who aspires to get into communications, wants to be an announcer in sports, something like that, what would you tell them?
I think a couple things. I think first of all, I would say try to get behind the mic as fast as you can. If you're in middle school, go up to the middle school basketball coach and say, "Have you ever thought about having a PA announcer for the games? Let me try that." Steve Murfin is my spotter in football at Maryland. He does some PA work at Maryland, is also a Montgomery County high school baseball coach. And Steve's first gig was he got cut from the middle school basketball team. And so he asked the coach, "Do you mind if I do the PA?" And so he started out doing that way. I started out, a lot of high schools, they've already got somebody doing football and basketball. Well, volunteer to do JV or do a sport that doesn't have a PA announcer because you'll get your reps, you'll learn how to do it, and then you might get noticed. The first paying gig that I ever had as a PA announcer, I was the PA announcer at Northwood for wrestling. Big match at the end of the year against one of the big schools. It was against Perry. And the referee happened to be the head of athletics and phys ed in Montgomery County. And he came up to me after the match and said, "What are you doing in 2 weeks?" I said, "Well, I'm probably going to go to the county wrestling tournament." He goes, "Yeah, you are, because you're going to be our PA announcer for the whole tournament, and we're going to pay you."
Wow.
And that was my first paying gig, and it was wrestling. It wasn't football. It wasn't basketball. It wasn't baseball, which is my first love. It was wrestling. And, just to get as many reps, you don't have to have the golden voice. You can be Mark Fratto is a friend of mine. He's the PA announcer for the Wizards in the
Mm-hmm.
NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Mark has that quintessential radio voice, but he's a very good PA announcer. And then also it helps to know as much about the sport as possible. Do you know the strategy? Do you know the rules? Do you know the history? Do you know the statistics? Do once you're starting with the team, especially if you're on radio, can you get out there and talk to the players, talk to the coaches, find some stories that you can weave in as you're going along? That's not obviously as important when you're the PA announcer because that doesn't happen. And learn to write. Learn to write and learn to write, and then love your English teacher and learn to write, because nobody's going to write the stuff for you, and you're the one who's going to be reading it to 18,000 people at Xfinity Center, 50,000 people at Maryland Stadium. So it better sound good, and you better know how to edit that stuff.
All right. So you announced for a number of the different programs at the University of Maryland. Which one do you like working best for? Which one do you like getting behind the mic?
I get this question, and people are always shocked when I give them the answer. I'm a baseball guy. I've always loved baseball since I was a little kid. I was a Senators fan. I was 12 when they moved. It killed me. I love baseball. And every baseball game I go to at Maryland in our open air press box, the college season starts in the middle of February. It's really cold. It's windy. It's rainy. Sometimes it's snowing. And I just love it. I love our coaching staff. The 3 staffs that I've worked for have been fantastic. The players are terrific. And I really enjoy it. And yet, we have games. We have Tuesday games in February or March when it's 41 degrees outside, and there might be 75 people in the stands. I call it a cell phone crowd there. It's friends and family, and that's it. So for me, though, baseball itself, the game itself, and the strategy and what you do to call baseball, I love doing that. But the opportunity to do basketball in a arena like Xfinity Center, when it's sold out, when we're playing Duke or Wisconsin or Michigan State or UVA or somebody in the crowd's really into it, and you're down there on the floor and you get to listen to all these coaches. I mean, some of the coaches literally stand right in front of me. I have to try to look around them during the game, and you get to see the different styles of coaching, and get to talk to the referees all the time and hear the crowd get into it. That's really neat. And
Who's the
football,
most
just because
interesting?
of the scope of it. So there's different things that you like about when there's 50,000 people in Maryland Stadium.
Oh yeah.
and you got a football game at night and the band is playing and the people are tailgating, and that's just goosebumps almost to do that. So I love them all. It's like asking, who's your favorite kid? It's like, I can't really pick a favorite kid. I love them all, but for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. I got you. I got you. All right. So let's just take the baseball team then, because they lost their season. They didn't even get off the ground, really.
15 games.
How do you think they'd have fared this year? I mean,
they were going to be pretty darn good. They had the number 7 recruiting class in the country the year before, and they had really solidified the pitching. We were 10-5. The team had flown down to Fort Worth to play a weekend series against TCU. They landed. They got to the hotel. They got pulled into a conference room and were told they're flying home tomorrow. The season's over. And I think we were going to – Randy Bednar is a Montgomery County guy that was an outfielder, and he could get drafted tomorrow night. He definitely would have gotten drafted in the 40-round draft without a doubt. Whether he's good enough to be in the top 5 rounds, I don't know. So he may come back. They're allowed to bring the seniors back from this year to next year, and our seniors are coming back. The coaches we got a really young coaching staff. They were the assistants to John Sheff before John went to Virginia Tech. And these guys, you can just see the growth in them as coaches. Their recruiting has been fantastic, and I think they're going to be really, really good next year. They're going to be terrific. I think they were going to really have a good season this year. Big Ten baseball is not quite like the ACC, obviously. The ACC is so good. You make top 8 teams in the ACC, probably going to make the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten, you probably got to be in the top 4 minimum, maybe the top 3. But I think that they had a shot to really have some really good pitching, and they had pitching depth, and that's what it takes to win.
Yeah, I enjoy watching college baseball. I'm a baseball fan, just like you. I mean, baseball's in my top 3, to be honest with you, with hockey and football. So let me go off course here a little bit. What do you think is going to happen with the 2020 Major League Baseball season?
Who knows? It's been frustrating. It's like, can't we get both teams and lock them in both groups, the owners and the players, and lock them in a room and say, you're not coming out that door until you've elected the Pope, or, whatever they do. It's just, let's do something to get out there and to get playing. Both sides are so distrustful for each other. If you told me they're not going to play a baseball season this year, I would be hugely disappointed, but it would not shock me. I would not go, oh my Lord, I can't believe that, because that's just the problem that they've had with baseball and all these labor, and the CBA is up in 2021. So I think they're trying to posture for that coming up as well. I think they do need to play 60, 70 games minimum to make it legitimate. I love the one idea that I read. Play it like the college season. Play 56 games and then put the teams in regionals. Do a regional. Have them go to 8 teams, go to the World Series, do the double elimination for 2 sides, and then the 2 teams that come out instead of best of 3, best of 7 for the championship. And do some fun things. Do some experimental things. I think there could be a problem if you tried to play baseball beyond, October 31st, November 1st or whatever. So I think that they, but to go out there and only play 40 or 50 games, that makes it for, is that really a baseball season or not? So I just hope, beyond all hope, in the next couple of days that they get this straightened out, because it's going to take them 10 days to get everybody logistically set up and tested and everything. 3 weeks probably for spring training, just because you got to get the pitchers ready. So now you're not talking about playing until late July.
Yep.
So you got to play late July, August, September, not too many off days, and try to go from there and salvage the season.
It just baffles me that the players won 114 games, and they're just. I don't necessarily, from my perspective, side with the players or the owners, but the owners own the team and they pay the salaries. And for the players to demand more of them and play less, that really, I don't know. From my perspective, I don't necessarily agree with what the players want out of that. Plus, in the long run, you got to expand that roster. You're not going to have minor league baseball. So You know, there's just like you said, there's so many factors that are gonna come into play there. And
So you're not going to have minor league baseball. You're not going to have the expense of that. To take sort of the players' side here, you know, when you work a school year, and if they were to shut down the schools for a month, you would not want them to cut down how much you make for the days that you are working. The owners are super wealthy. The teams are worth
absolutely,
$1 billion. Some of these players, forget the Max Scherzers, the Steven Strasburgs, the Anthony Rendones, those people that are making
Garrett
huge money.
Coles.
Right. Look at the guys who are 15 through 25 on the roster, and their window for making money is not that great. All they're doing is saying, we want our per game rate. So obviously they want to play as many games as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they're coming from. And when the owners are saying, well, we're not going to be bringing in money because we don't have the fans or whatever, well, you still got the TV money, and you already have tons and tons and tons of money, and you're probably going to be owning the team 10 years from now. But the vast majority of the players in the major leagues that are playing right now, they're not going to be playing 10 years from now. So they got a small window to make that money. Both sides have to give in. Yeah. The NBA players and the NBA owners seem to really work together as a team. It's not adversarial. It's part of a team.
I see this in the NHL.
Yep, and baseball doesn't have that right now.
No.
That's what's hurting the game. And here, they should be having the run of the whole thing. I mean, golf's starting up this week, and NASCAR has been back, but baseball could be dominating this summer. And if they blow this window next year, people are liable to say, hey, we found other things to do. I'm back. I used to watch NASCAR all the time until the Nationals came back to Washington, and now I'm back to watching NASCAR and watching the races. And there might be people out there that say, I'm going to stick with NASCAR instead of baseball, and that'll be sad if that happens.
You got a landmark game coming up for you here. Your 500th. You're going to announce. Talk a little bit about that for me.
Yeah, it'll be my 500th game as the PA announcer at Maryland. When it's going to be is up in the air. It was going to be during the Nebraska series in baseball this year. There had not been any rainouts, and then, of course, the season got canceled. And so whatever the sixth game is that I do this year will be my 500th game. The sixth game could be our sixth home football game of the season, or it could be like our first home basketball game because they're in early November. Right. So until I see the schedules, and of course we don't know, are they going to start college football on time? Are they going to play? What are they going to do? What are they going to do with the schedules? We don't know. But the 5 just means that I've been lucky enough to be doing baseball for 10 years. And baseball, obviously, you do a lot of games. And this is my 9th football season, and my 8th basketball season. And also I did the PA for women's basketball for a few years and filled in on a couple of other games, men's and women's lacrosse and a soccer game here and there. But it's a lot of fun for me because I'm a Maryland fan. I grew up wanting to go to Maryland. I live near Maryland, and so it's not a job. It's something I used to say to people, if you won the lottery, would you keep doing your job? And I said, yep, I'd keep doing this job. Everybody says, well, how much longer are you going to go? I'm like, well, either they're going to push me out the door or I will be in the ground. Yeah. That's the plan, because I just, I have to drive 2 hours and 10 minutes to go to College Park.
Sure.
And it's just something I absolutely love to do. And, I love, and the coaches, and then the marketing department at Maryland this year was named the #1 marketing department for college athletics. It's the second time they've won the award since I've been there. And Jordan Luby and the people I work with in the marketing department are fabulous. And Jason Yellen and all the sports information people, they're so good and so fun to work with. And then to work with, Johnny Holliday and the various football guys I work with, CJ Brown, Lamont Jordan, our engineer, Tom Marquito, is the best engineer in the world. I was Johnny Holliday's stat guy when I was his intern.
Wow.
Did it for a year or so after I graduated. And then because I got involved with teaching and coaching, and I couldn't really do it anymore. He says, do you know anybody that might want to do the job? And I said, yeah, I got this guy I went to high school with. His name's Brett Bassell, and Brett's still Johnny's stat guy to this day. So when it was really neat when we did, I filled in for Johnny last year. He had a little bit of surgery on his shoulder, and it was Lamont Jordan was the color guy. It was me doing the play-by-play. Steve Rear was our spotter, and Brett Bissell, and all four of us went to Maryland. So that was really neat to be able to be a part of that whole thing. We just grow up, being a Maryland fan, and that's what makes it so fun to go out there and do.
You definitely lived your dream going to Maryland and staying an active part in you're a legacy there in so many ways. I know that from my perspective, knowing you. Um, my final question for you is this. Sports is obviously your passion. I can hear it in your voice. Anybody who's listening to this or watching this can hear it in your voice. But if sports didn't exist
Like now,
at all,
there's no
let's
sports
say,
now, right?
right. Let's say there were no sports ever. Where would you put your energies and passion? What would you pour all that into?
I guess the two things you never know, because you never know what you're going to
Right.
fall into. So I've always had this dream of owning a radio station. I always thought it would be neat to own not a radio station in Washington or Baltimore or Pittsburgh or some big market, but in a small market on the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland. Pat Sajak, who does the Wheel of Fortune, his son was my intern for a couple of years at Maryland. Worked with me on the baseball games, and Pat Sajak, Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak, his son's Pat also. He owns a couple radio stations, one in Westminster, one in Annapolis. And so I've talked to him. He said, don't do it. It's like buying a boat or a horse. Just, just takes your money. But, something like that would be fun. But, I got into teaching, and I used to tell, when kids in class would say, why do I have to know this? Why am I reading the Odyssey? Why am I reading Romeo and Juliet? Why do I need to know this? You're a ninth grader. I said, you know what? I said the exact same thing when I was in ninth grade. Little did I know that 10 years later, I would be teaching the Odyssey and Romeo and Juliet. And so sometimes when something's not there, the broadcasting stuff wasn't there right away, something else falls into your lap. And I loved teaching. I had no intention, none. If you had told me in high school you were going to be a teacher, I would have just rolled on the floor laughing. And I loved teaching. I loved the classroom. I loved the kids. I liked the subject. I liked the schedule of them getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I really, really enjoyed. So I've been very lucky to have two very distinct careers. So it might probably do something, in the education world. But then again, I got into education because of sports.
Right.
So it all comes back and ties together.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I feel the same way about teaching, exact same way. Like I love it, and I've got a few more years to go. I know you always give me some good sound advice for that. I do this bit called Decade Definers, and I'm going to change it just a little bit, and I want to do it with you this time.
Okay.
I want you to name for me the 5 most influential or important athletes to ever wear a Maryland Terrapins uniform.
And that was tough. I mean, that's a tough question because you really have to parse the question down. One, you're talking about athletes, so that eliminates Gary Williams, and Jerry Claiborne and coaches or whatever.
Sure.
And you said the word influential, not necessarily the best player, but influential.
Right.
So when I look back, if I look at basketball first, I think a lot of Maryland fans will tell you influential player, Walt Williams is one. Because when Maryland was put on probation in the late 80s, Walt Williams was the star. And had he not stayed at Maryland, Maryland might have gone 0-27 in basketball. Gary Williams might have left and never stayed at Maryland to build the basketball program into what it was. He was a local guy that went to Crossland High School. He still works on the basketball broadcast today. He is a great ambassador for Maryland athletics. So I think his influence is huge. Len Bias, another local guy, Northwestern High School, influential on the court, the games, the game that when they beat Duke, or no, it was a North Carolina game, I guess. The first game that North Carolina lost in the Dean Dome when it was built. Maryland beat them, and Bias had like 35 points in that game, and he was amazing. He was going to be on par with the Magic Johnsons and the LeBron James and the Michael Jordans. He may not have been that good, but he was right there. The Celtics were going to be terrific. And unfortunately, he had a huge influence on the school because of all the stuff that happened when he passed away and all the sanctions that happened and the restrictions that Maryland put on athletics. And it really sent the athletic program into a bit of a spiral for some people even say that there's still that Len bias effect, and that was, from the 80s. Now, I have to look at football also. When I'm looking at football, if you went back to players before my time, the Mojaleskis, the Shiners, the Scarbaths, the Filonis, I got the Maryland quarterbacks behind me, this famous picture of all the Maryland quarterbacks. So I'm going to stick to what I remember, but Randy White would be the first one. He was the first big recruit. Roy Lester actually recruited him to come to Maryland. He was the Maryland coach for a couple of years, was a great high school coach in Montgomery County. I got to work with him at Magruder. And Randy White sort of opened the, sort of Maryland as a good program. So when Jerry Claiborne came in, there were some good players there. They were able to continue to really recruit good players. And Maryland and Clemson dominated the ACC in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Scott McBrien was huge for Maryland. He's another local guy, a DeMatha guy. He was the MVP of both the Gator Bowl and the Peach Bowl. When Ralph Friedgen was first there, got Maryland back on the map in football and really built the excitement back up. And, he stayed connected with the program. And, of course, that DeMatha connection is so big. If I were going to put a fifth person in there, Juan Dixon obviously would go in there. And I'm leaving out lacrosse players, or I could say Jen Adams in women's lacrosse, or, soccer players, because I'm sticking to what the teams that I've sort of announced for.
Sure.
Those are the ones I know best. So I got to throw in as a tie for fifth, both Christy Tolliver in basketball, because she hit the big shot to send the national championship game into overtime, and then Maryland beat Duke in overtime. I was in school one day and in the gym, and I remember a guy shooting a shot in gym class. And instead of saying Magic for three or LeBron for three, he said Tolliver for three. And I said, wow, the impact she's had on the game, because guys know who Christy Tolliver is as a women's basketball player. And then Mike Schwarn, the baseball player, 2 regionals, All-American, career strikeout leader, career wins leader at Maryland, pitches for the Red Sox right now, bounces up down between the big league team and AAA. Hugely influential to the resurrection of the baseball program, during this past decade. So tough question. Hopefully those are some good names there.
Those were some good names. No doubt about it. Well, I'm going to thank my guest, Matt Noble. Is excellent talking to you. You can find Matt on Twitter at Radio Noble. You can also listen to him for Maryland games on the TuneIn app, the free version. We're the flagship stations for the Maryland Sports Radio Network, 105.7 FM or 1300 AM in Baltimore, and on the Team 980 in DC.
And other stations also around the state of Maryland as well, but those are our flagship stations as well.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you coming on. It was great talking to you, and have a good summer. Let me just throw this in. Matt actually lives in along the Eastern Shore down there since retiring from teaching, so I don't feel too bad for him. Now
yeah, you made me come off the beach to do this, but it was a lot of fun, Mark. It's always fun to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too, Matt.
All right, take care, buddy.
To your wife, and you take care. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.